Alrighty, folks, 2 videos down and 2 to go. Let's go ahead and start getting into this conclusion. So, first things first, I'm going to have you watch this video here about writing a scientific conclusion. Go ahead and pause this screencast, watch this video, and come back once you've completed that video. Welcome back, folks. I hope you enjoyed watching that video and have a little bit better idea of why we use conclusions in science. We're going to talk specifically about how we write conclusions here in physical science. And what we use to write conclusions is something known as a RAPS conclusion. And RAPS is an acronym that stands for the 5 things that we do when we are writing a conclusion in physical science. You can find the rubric for this on page 1 of your workbook if you would like to follow along with these conclusion components. The first component is the R, which stands for rephrase. In this section, we're going to rephrase the problem or the purpose in your own words. And if we can, we're also going to talk about what was our hypothesis. To talk about the RAPS conclusion, we're going to think about the superbubbles investigation from the SpongeBob activity. So, if we were going to write a RAPS conclusion for this investigation, we might have for the rephrase section that the purpose was to investigate superbubbles, and it claimed that they'll create superbubbles that are twice as large as regular bubbles. The hypothesis is that superbubbles will form bubbles that are twice as large because the advertisement claims this will be true. So again, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? And include that hypothesis. The A part of the RAPS conclusion means we're answering the question or problem stated in the purpose. We also want to make sure that we're telling our readers how do we actually get this answer. So we're going to sort of restate the procedure a little bit, talk about how did we do this experiment, and also make a claim about the results of the experiment. Again, with the superbubbles, we could talk about how did they do that experiment, and then we could say that the results showed that the superbubbles did not create bubbles that were twice as large as regular bubbles. The first P in our RAPS conclusion stands for provide evidence. So in our previous section, we talked about some sort of claim. Now's our chance to back it up. We can use data, graphs, and observations that support our answer. You should always be using data if you can. And it's best if we're using quantitative evidence, so numbers, to link our conclusion to the scientific concepts. Always use data if you can when we're providing evidence. Here we can see that we could talk about our superbubbles created an average bubble size of 15.1 centimeters, while the regular soap only created bubbles that were 11.5 centimeters. While the bubbles were large, they were not twice as large. Our second P stands for possible experimental errors that are systemic or inherent to the procedure. So, in this section, you're wanting to discuss 2 possible errors and how that might have an effect on the results. We're also going to be taking a look and making sure that the effect is kind of what you would expect to happen. And you're also going to offer some reasons or suggestions on how to eliminate or reduce those errors. Human error is a little too broad. You want to be as specific as possible in what could be some potential errors. In the case of the superbubbles, maybe there were errors that occurred during the measurement of the bubbles. The bubble diameters were quickly estimated because the bubbles were going to pop during measurement. And another error that Patrick and SpongeBob created bubbles, and it would have been a better control to only have 1 subject testing the solutions. The last letter in our RAPS conclusion is S, which stands for scientific writing. And this one, you don't have to actually write anything. This is more so just a check for you to make sure that you have correctly spelled words, you're not using pronouns, and your conclusion is clear.